times, great music, 2NURFM 103.7. Hello, good morning, Mark Rourke with you today. We've been talking a lot this morning about public transport. It kind of is sort of back in the news a little bit for a whole bunch of reasons, with including a couple of federal politicians when asked recently about the prospect of seeing a return for passenger rail into the coalfields, kind of putting the hand up and saying it's not a bad idea. Somebody that's been on this case for a little while now, represents the organisation Trains to Cessnock. His name is Andrew Fenwick. Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. Look, my personal view is it's a service that never should have been lost to begin with, but you have been on the campaign trail for a while to see a train line, passenger train service back up into the Cessnock area. How realistic do you feel we are on that now versus where we may have been even a short time ago?
Thanks. Good morning, Mark, and all the listeners. Thanks for following up on this. It's a very important issue. I really do think that we've gone from being just part of a 2041 strategic plan to being something that's actually doable and achievable before 2028. I can't say, of course, we've had no promises off anyone that this is what's going to happen, but the mood of each of the stakeholders that we've spoken with so far, including politicians, is very favourable for at least having a proper look at it, which hasn't been done before. So we've actually got a public submission for funding in this upcoming budget to cover a proper feasibility study by Transport New South Wales, some initial design work, and to start the acquisition conversation. So,
well, I've got to say, Andrew, I was just going to say, I've got to be surprised, Andrew, to find that we are that far ahead. I know the conversations and advocacy obviously have been happening behind the scenes there for a while now. When you look at maybe even where we were population-wise, and say 10 or 15 years ago, the area that basically sits along the rail line into the coalfields, all the way from Maitland through Gillieston Heights, Curry, and to Cessnock, and certainly now Bellbird, with the amount of folks that are living there now, it kind of makes sense that there are some public transport options.
Oh, absolutely. And it's something you couldn't achieve if you wanted to now. Like, if that line didn't exist and we wanted to propose to put a rail line in, it would be almost impossible to get the rail line that close to the people. At the moment, if you look along all the proposed stations from Gillieston Heights through to Bellbird, within 1 kilometre each of those stations, there's nearly 50,000 people living. So within walking distance of the station, there's 50,000 people, which gives it a population that's already viable for public transport like this.
And again, with those areas growing, I mean, we talk about the Gillieston Heights area. I mean, I think there have been about 10 houses built since we started our conversation this morning there, and at the other end of Bellbird and Cessnock as well. I kind of think also that for a lot of folks that go into the coalfields from, say, the Hunter or even beyond for events that are happening in the vineyards and for tourism out there, this also would be a nice connection as well. You get the train to the area and get a connection from there across the last little bit. So, I mean, there are tourism opportunities as well, notwithstanding for regular public transport that could be latched onto.
Absolutely. You can imagine people coming in on a cruise ship, hopping on a special train that takes them to Bellbird, and they hop on the bus and they're in the vineyards 10 minutes later. And back to the Nest Hotel for lunch, and then all these things that you can do. And it's the key to this is that we talk about this as being like a Bellbird to Newcastle service, but it's actually a Bellbird to Curry service and a Western to Cessnock service. It's the inter-village traffic that would be taken off the road as well.
Oh, for sure. And for folks that sort of work in Newcastle and Maitland and things like that, I mean, you can just pop on the train, you're 10 or 15 minutes away. I mean, personally, don't get me wrong, I love sitting in the motor car, I love driving, but if you could have a train service almost literally at your front door, like those in parts of Newcastle and Maitland certainly enjoy, you would most likely jump on it. The only thing that I could probably see is a bit of a where would we do it from here? I mean, the spaces where most of those older stations were, there's still pretty much, you could just, build a new one there. We think of Curry, Western, Abermain, Neath. I mean, you just build where the old ones were. But the land at Cessnock, that right at the end of Vincent Street there, that's no longer vacant. There's a lot of shops and industry there. So, I mean, where would you see a station at Cessnock going, which would be the number one destination on that line, Andrew?
As you said, there's like a little industrial estate that's been built in the spot where Cessnock Station used to be, because Cessnock Station used to be a little terminus in itself. So the coal line used to branch off before Cessnock Station and go back around Cessnock to Pelton and up the back there. At the moment, somewhere between where the station used to be and the back of the high school, you've got a lot of vacant land, a lot of wide corridor there that would be, perfectly suitable to set up the first station for Cessnock. And we can always look at this. I mean, one of our big concerns with this is the perception of expense, and the work we've done so far has been very accurate and targeted to say how much this, in the ballpark where it's going to end up. But there's always a danger that people might come in and say, but it's not perfect, and we want this to be done, and we want that to be done. And that's what will turn it into $1 billion project instead of a $100 to $200 million project. And what we really need to focus on, particularly with the political stakeholders, is that we try and keep the scope of this down to the bare minimum to get a service running and then build it from there, rather than try and make it perfect before we start, because making it perfect could delay the whole project by 5 or 10 years.
Yep, something that is good as opposed to the perfect diamond-crusted best option, which you know that is never going to happen. And I have to say, I just got to put the cherry on the cake for you. I know this is very much in that diamond area, but I don't know if we got this up and running, Andrew. I could actually see once you got to Bellbird, just have the whole thing just shoot a little bit further and make a beeline for Hunter Valley Gardens, get people right into the vineyards. But that's a discussion for another day, maybe.
We would like to see it go further, because it's, the populations of Millfield, along Paxton, that's another area where there's lots of new estates and new homes coming in.
True.
And even now, we get a lot of positive from people in Wallumbye, that they could expect to have a regular bus service from Wallumbye to Bellbird to get on a train, because at the moment there's no public transport out there at all. And the further we creep southwest, the more people are going to benefit from this.
All right. Well, hopefully some of the positive chatter that you've been talking about as we started, Andrew, from the politicians can actually garnish into something that is that's very quick, that just happens. Like I said, the rail line's there, so it's just a redo of it, and it could be a start of a rail revolution in the Hunter. From Trains for Cessnock, Andrew Fenwick, thank you so much for your time. We'll follow this with some interest down the track. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for your time, Mark.
2NURFM 103.7.